Hello and welcome to our Lunch and Learn today with Chris Bawtree, our Nature Recovery Director. He's going to be going through the Evergreen Fund and what we've been doing and the success that we've had. Chris, over to you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy days to sit down to this lunch and learn. For those that don't know me, Chris Bawtree, Nature Recovery Director. Been with the business over 27 years now. Started off as a landscape architect, ran our landscape construction business for a while, and then sort of more recently focusing on our woodland creation, our environmental and sustainability goals, and working for our Evergreen Fund. And we thought it was really important to celebrate 5 years at Wildfell and give everyone an update on what's been achieved. Just want to give a little reminder of the Evergreen Fund, an update on the project, what we've achieved, journey to date, what's next, some of the challenges that we've had to overcome, a little bit on the biodiversity net gain market, which is going to be important for us for future revenues. So starting off with our Evergreen Fund, a really unique and innovative fund set up in 2020 to really show that we're walking the walk in terms of our environmental commitments. Ground Control's always been committed to caring for our environment. It's a core purpose of the business, and the Evergreen Fund was really going above and beyond just caring for, but looking at how we can enhance it, so leave the environment in a better place than we found it, which is another one of our key sustainability goals, and also demonstrate that businesses can be a force for good in terms of their positive environmental impact. So we take 5% of Ground Control's annual net profits come out and go directly into the Evergreen Fund. So all of your input in terms of making Ground Control the successful business that it is today is contributing to what we're doing as a fund. And I think that's really important for everyone to remember, that whatever you're doing for the business, you are supporting the fund. Green equity investments was our original goal. So looking at supporting innovative green tech around carbon reduction, smart energy use, those sort of elements that have a positive impact on the environment. Also putting money into tree planting. So we had £100,000 a year allocated to tree planting. And the funds evolved and pivoted. We were struggling a bit to find land to plant trees on. So we took the plunge and decided that we were going to invest in land ourselves to deliver nature recovery projects. And that's how Wildfell came about, and Devana following on. Another really important element of the Evergreen Fund is it's perpetual. So any profits that we gain through our equity investments and through our land-based projects will go back into the fund. So the aim is that we can do more projects similar to Wildfell and Devana going forward. So in terms of our nature recovery projects and this investment in land, are celebrating the 5-year anniversary of Wildfell. Obviously, the purchase went through in May 2021. Just under 300 acres of farm and woodland in North Essex, near Wethersfield, Finchingfield. And then we followed on 2 years later with a second property in South Cambridgeshire, 100 acres of predominantly arable land, which was bought for the sole purpose of setting up a habitat bank alongside nature recovery. Our goals for this land holding, 3 sort of key objectives. We want to maximise the environmental potential of the site. So we're not just looking at tree planting for carbon or habitat creation for biodiversity net gain. We're really fortunate to be a landowner, and we have a real responsibility to make the most out of that green asset. We want to leave an environmental legacy for everyone that's worked for Ground Control over the years. also our clients and other stakeholders. So people can look back in 5, 10, 50 years time at these projects and really see that legacy of an environmental enhancement that we've delivered. Also sharing and developing best practice. So we've got facilities now on site that we can host events, training sessions, etc. We can have an impact through our current sites, but we want to be able to amplify that through encouraging clients to look at their land holdings in different ways, look at that real nature positive approach to land management, and support others doing the same work as us, so we can really look to try and make an impact on the biodiversity crisis and climate change in this country. So Wildfell, as I said, 300 acres, just under, and we want this to be a showcase for sustainable land management, and we want to review how we're progressing over the years going forward to really show we are making a positive impact through our land holding. Woodland creation was a key element when we were looking at buying land. We wanted to carry out a significant woodland creation project. We also wanted to look at habitat creation for biodiversity net gain and use this site and Devon as a platform for collaboration. So we've got a real focus on pollinators, working with Plant Life, Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew, the Bumblebee Conservation Trust. We've worked with clients such as the Environment Agency on projects and engagement. We're working with the North Essex Farm Cluster, so a group of landowners in North Essex, to inspire them to look at their land holdings in a slightly different way and look at opportunities for nature recovery within elements of their land, and create the facilities, the hub for engagement and learning, which we've done through the barn building on site. So situated just to the north of Wethersfield Village, so a number of stakeholders within the village, surrounded by arable land and the Wethersfield Air Base up to the north of the site there. Interesting cross-section through the landscape. We've got the River Pant boundary and river corridor down in the southwest, and then we're at the top of the catchment to the northeast of the site. So we've got a good swathe of land that we can influence water movement, water quality through the site. And in terms of our starting point, so our habitat baseline, we have arable fields around the central core of ancient woodland. And that ancient woodland is really significant. We've been woodland there since 1600, and it's characterised, certified as an irreplaceable habitat because it's been around for so long. So we're lucky to have that resource already on site. Some areas of grassland, a network of hedges around the boundary in various levels of condition, small pockets of scrub, and some existing unmanaged ponds. And we sit from a biodiversity perspective within the Braintree District Council planning area and within the South Suffolk and North Essex Clayland national character area. So that's the area which we look to make biodiversity units available within that area primarily. And in terms of what we set out to do 5 years ago, habitat creation was a key element. So we've created now 125 acres of new native woodland. It's the largest planting scheme in Essex, probably East Anglia, over the last sort of 10, 15 years or so. 55 acres of species-rich grassland, a really endangered and critical habitat type that's been lost over the years significantly. 35 acres of mixed scrub, a sort of mosaic of woody native plants and species-rich grassland, creating new wildlife ponds, so really bolstering the freshwater habitats types across the site. creating new native hedgerows to link everything together. So yeah, just over 4 kilometres have gone in for that. And just to sort of bring that to life a little bit, everyone likes a football pitch size comparison. So we're sort of 62 football pitches worth of native woodlands, 27 and a half of grassland, and 17 and a half of scrub. So really significant environmental and ecological benefit that we are delivering and have delivered over the last 5 years. And to go in hand with the habitat creation, habitat enhancement. So the ancient woodlands, 55 acres there, hadn't been managed actively for probably 30, 40 years and was beginning to deteriorate. So we need to bring our woodlands in the UK back into management to make them more resilient, more productive. Also, the areas of heathland and scrub, improving the quality of those habitats. We've enhanced 5 ponds on site, so doing dredging works, vegetation removal to get light into those ponds. And our existing hedgerows, we've got about 5 kilometres of existing hedgerows, and it's improving those as well. So creating new, but also improving what we currently have. And in terms of the overall master plan, this is potentially, what we're looking to achieve over a 30-year period. So we've got a swathe of new woodlands that connects up with the ancient woodland, connects up with the river corridor. We've got the transition through native scrub planting, wildflower meadows. We've got a traditional orchard, community orchard going in, as well as opening up new footpaths for public access, creating the barn complex that we've got. So from a habitat point of view, we're delivering biodiversity units, which can be used by developers to support their planning applications. And for us, that's a real certified measure of the impact that we're having. So we're not just talking about doing all these great things for nature. We're going to have a measurable metric of what we're achieving on the ground. So going through the progress made so far. So started in March when we were looking for the land, and then the purchase in May 2021. We had a tenant farmer in place that we retained for 18 months while we got our plans together. Carried out a really comprehensive baseline. So again, we want this to be a science-based project so we can actually prove the positive impact that we were having. We developed our design in that first year, started our first planting, and a real team effort from ground controls, range of services that we offer. We've had our landscape designers involved, our GIS team, our ecologists. As we've progressed, we've had procurement, health and safety, using construction and maintenance contract managers to support alongside field teams. So, a part of that ground control team effort, I've called upon a lot of skills within the business to support the development of the scheme. We also looked at grant application. Another key element of what we're doing here, we want this to be a financially sustainable project. So looking at what all the sort of opportunities for generating revenue could be, and I'll come onto that a little bit more later. We started off the DEFRA metric. It has evolved over the last 5 years from the original metric of 2.0 to the statutory metric now, but that basically gives us our baseline score and the future achievable score in terms of the uplifts, and that delivers units that we can then sell going forward. So in August 2022, after we took our second and final harvest under our ownership, we carried out seeding works across the site. So that was a key element, getting that ground cover in place over those ex-arable fields. And also looking at taking out some of the nutrients left from the agricultural work. So we had a nutrient strip crop of a very vigorous annual grass, and then permanent ground cover under the woodland creation areas. And we had funding through the Great Crested Newt district licensing scheme to put in 5 new ponds and restore 3. So that work started in 2022. And then 2022, 2023, we kicked off our woodland creation and hedgerow planting. And that's when we were able to delve in again into that great team spirit of ground control and have volunteers up on site. And hopefully a few of you that are on the call now have been up to Wildfell on one or more occasions to help us planting. Really enjoyable days for me and the teams on the ground to see people within the business coming together, getting their hands dirty and helping us plant. I think overall, I've had probably over 400 volunteer days over the last 5 years, helping us out with our planting and getting that engagement. And just jumping back to the baseline surveys, we looked at habitat, protected species, a range of different species, including birds, bats, mammals, etc. We looked at carbon and water quality. So we'll be able to monitor all those things going forward to judge how we're doing. So into the second full year, we had to update the DEFRA metric, the measurement for the biodiversity gain. We took a silage cut and then a haylage cut from the nutrient strips. So by doing cut and collect, you're removing nutrients, which makes the soil more suitable for establishment of wildflower meadows. We created in the summer during the dry weather the biodiversity ponds. I think 7 or 8 of those went in over that period. And then in autumn 2023, we completed the other neutral grassland preparation and seeding. So that's the species rich grassland went in the autumn, and we were setting out the rest of the scheme. So again, using our GIS mapping and our landscape design team to help with that setting out. And then into the winter season, we're into the next phase of woodland creation, so more volunteers, engagement with the clients, into the second phase of hedgerow planting, scrub planting. Our orchard went in, and we completed the barn facilities during that time. So that gave us a permanent venue, meeting room, welfare facilities, so that we can use that for training, client away days, etc. So a really important asset as part of the nature recovery process. Then into 24 and 25, our final update of the metric, when the legislation came in for biodiversity net gain, the statutory metric. And we also were engaging with the local planning authority. We have to get a legal agreement in place to be able to market and sell our biodiversity units, basically committing us to delivering those units and managing them for a minimum of 30 years. Then into the summer, we were carrying out our establishment cuts of the wildflower areas, so cut and collect over that period, and starting our first year of monitoring surveys. So as part of our ongoing management and monitoring, the ecologists come out and carry out surveys across the project to ensure that the direction of travel is right in terms of the habitats we're creating, making sure we're protecting what we should as well, and getting that science-based approach. Further cut and collects in the autumn, and then surveying our first year of woodland planting to assess losses so that we could carry out replacement planting. And Then into the planting season, we had the replacement planting again, which volunteers were involved with, finishing off hedgerow planting and starting the woodland management. So although it's an ancient woodland site, the majority of it was planted up with poplar in the sort of 80s, grown as a crop for matchstick production. So we've got a fantastic crop of non-native poplar, but unfortunately the matchstick market is no longer viable, so we're having to sell for pallet wood and biomass wood chips. So we're taking out all the non-native trees and then replanting with native to enhance that ancient woodland and restore that ancient woodland area. So into 25, 26, we had a phase cut and collect for the species-rich grassland. We were really struggling with the local planning authority in getting our legal agreement in place. So we engaged further with one of our partners, Plant Life, to see whether we could get an agreement in place with them as opposed to the local planning authority. We also carried out further eDNA surveys, so environmental DNA testing of the water in our ponds. And it was really encouraging to see that one of the pond restorations, which didn't have any great crested newts in prior to restoration, had evidence of great crested newts coming in, so starting to spread across the site, which is fantastic news. Then into the summer, another cut and collect for our grassland areas, and we were able to get our legal agreement in place with Plant Life through a conservation covenant, and that allows us to put our project onto the DEFRA biodiversity gain site, which monitors the allocation of biodiversity units nationally. So we have to be on there. That's our license to trade, really. So it was great getting on there in the summer. And we did a second round of monitoring surveys, including breeding birds. So our first biodiversity unit sale came in autumn 2025. So it was great to see that market working. We'd actually been selling units from Devana for the previous 12 months. So we saw that the market was starting to get up and running, but I'll come on to a little bit more detail of that later as to how the biodiversity market is evolving. And then in the winter, we carried out the second round of replacement planting for the second phase of woodland creation. And similarly for the scrub areas, carried out the replacement planting there. And then the woodland management has been ongoing through the last winter season. So just delving into a little bit more detail in what's been achieved over the 5 years from a specific habitat point of view. So we have created 125 acres of new native broadleaf woodlands. We've planted over 96,000 native trees and shrubs within that. And we've calculated that will capture about 18,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide, so having its positive impact on climate change by year 50. And putting that into context, I had a quick look earlier, and I think the average sort of carbon footprint of an individual in the UK is about 10 tonnes a year. So a wide range of tree species used, so really important for future resilience against climate change that we get a whole variety of different tree species going into our woodlands. Deer impact is a real challenge for us on our site, as it is across large swathes of the UK now. So we had to put up over 9 kilometres of deer and rabbit fencing. And we've trialled strip and individual mulch mat mulching techniques. So you can see in the photo here the sort of parallel lines of a weed-proof membrane and green waste compost over the top, which is planted into. So again, with climate change and the effects of that, we're getting really early, dry, warm springs, which couldn't be any worse for trying to establish trees in their first couple of years. Water retention, weed management is really important in those early years for getting the trees away. Also within the woodland areas, we've got areas of natural regeneration. So we've fenced off the browsers, so deer, rabbit, hare, etc. And these areas are adjacent to the existing woodlands, and we're going to see how that sort of let nature take its course, and we can compare and contrast with the planted areas. And all the woodland creation, we had initial funding through Ground Control and the Evergreen Fund, but it's fully funded through the Forestry Commission's England Woodland Creation offer now, which is fantastic. There's a real push by the government, DEFRA and the Forestry Commission to support tree planting. We've tapped into that to support our projects here. So grassland creation, we developed a bespoke mix with one of our suppliers, an 80-10, 80-20 grass and wildflower mix, bespoke for our predominantly clay soils. So that went in 22-23 season. Our community orchard, our traditional orchard, we're using heritage and local fruit cultivars. And we found a fantastic orchard expert who lives relatively locally, who helped with the specification there to get those traditional varieties. And that orchard is a really exciting opportunity for us on the site to combine that people and planet. So we're looking for it to be set up as a community orchard, get local residents involved, and then as it develops, we'll be able to put fresh fruit into the local community, hopefully tie up with a food bank or something like that. It's taken 3 seasons to start that establishment period for a meadow. I think it's going to take probably another 2-3 years to get fully established and fully functioning, but we've had really impressive flushes of wildflowers over the last 2 seasons. So really seeing that coming to fruition, and we're getting real diversity of species in there, which is being picked up through our ongoing ecological surveys and reporting. Nutrient strip really enhanced soil preparation to get a clean seed bed at the outset for cut and collect operations, and then a phased cut and collect last year, and that use of heritage and local fruits cultivars in the orchard. So mixed scrub, light grassland, there's been really horrendous losses of this habitat over the last sort of 50, 60 years, and really valuable for wildlife, basically creating blocks of native shrub planting surrounded by open space, rides, etc. So providing kind of sheltered areas for pollinators, butterflies, small mammals, birds, etc. So really valuable from an ecological and a nature recovery perspective. And a number of you have helped with the replanting of some of those areas where we've had a few losses, and basically it's creating those blocks with the open space of wildflower meadow. So again, that kind of matrix of habitat types. We had rabbit and hare protection initially. I was hoping that the scrub wouldn't be quite as appetizing and appealing to the deer as the woodland areas were. Unfortunately, this turned out to be quite misjudged, and they did like having their breakfast out on the fields out there. So this year we've taken the decision to increase our deer fencing and fence off those areas. But it's part of that adaptive management. So we see what works, where things don't, we can step in, make changes to ensure we deliver the beneficial outcomes that we've set out to do. So the ponds, 11 ponds created. We're sort of very lucky in a way to have Essex clay soils across a lot of the land, so we don't need to do any pond liners, bring in any plastics or rubber materials. We can just excavate, remodel the area, track that ground in, and then those ponds, as we can see in the photo here, fill up from groundwater, natural springs, and rainwater. We've got those 3 existing ponds that have been rehabilitated, and that's where we've had the transition of great crested newts from one of the existing ponds into one of the restored ponds. Where we're going into existing arable fields, we've had to cap off some of the land drainage to make sure that the ponds hold water. And as mentioned, we're looking to create a regionally and probably nationally significant stronghold for great crested newts in the area by creating the pond habitat, was really important, but that mixture of other habitats around them, which are also really important for newts. They only breed in the ponds, and then they spend the rest of their time out foraging in grassland, scrub, the woodland areas, etc. Then pond creation, really important nature corridor element which connects up various parts of the site, planted again, trying to get that range of species, that diversity to give resilience and real benefits. So 13 different species going in, planted quite densely at 5 a metre, protected by spiral guards and shelters at the moment, and also putting trees into those hedgerows. Again, volunteers have helped us out with this, and those hedgerows are getting away really nicely now. Mulch for weed suppression, retaining moisture. Essex, as most people know, is a very dry county, so anything we can do to retain moisture and stop that weed competition is really important. So in terms of the next steps, we've been at it 5 years now. I think we've made real strides to deliver on what we set out to do 5 years ago in creating a regionally significant nature recovery project. And really, we're now into the really challenging part of getting these habitats fully established and delivering the benefits that we know they will and we want to be able to show. So ongoing establishment management, that monitoring and reporting on a habitat, but also species, carbon, and generating those sustainable revenues through biodiversity net gain unit sales. And we really want to sort of continue to build on opening up the site as well. So there's a real push from myself on community engagement. We're working with a local group on the traditional community orchard. We're also doing citizen science through the Bumblebee Conservation Trust, doing their bee walk survey transects. So getting the local community involved and ongoing volunteering for people within the business, but also clients and other stakeholders. Continue to deliver the educational events like Lunch and Learn today. I think we had 35, 36 events last year actually up at the farm. So real opportunity to bring clients to site. We can comfortably accommodate sort of 12 to 15 people around the meeting room table there. They can have an off-site meeting, presentation, tour around the site. So something a bit different, but primarily to showcase the significant impact that the business is having on nature recovery. And making sure we're getting the most out of our sites, classified as co-benefits from a biodiversity point of view, but what we're delivering here is going to be permanent. So in effect, it'll become a nature reserve. We won't be reverting to agriculture on any elements of the site. We're delivering significant carbon sequestration that I've talked about. And because of these extra benefits, we're delivering really high integrity biodiversity net gain units, which should help the marketing and sale of those units, but also give developers that confidence that we know what we're about. We're delivering a quality unit. So Impact on water. We've stopped any fertiliser additions since we took the site on, so we won't be impacting watercourses with additional nutrient load. We've reduced pesticide use down to an absolute minimum. We just do a bit of herbicide application to get those plants established, and that will stop as soon as possible. Also, by the amount of planting we've done, we're going to be slowing the flow of water into the river, so contributing significantly to natural flood management. There's that people element, so engaging with our own people within the business, our clients, that community engagement. We've opened up our public access. We've got over 5 kilometres of new permissive footpaths across the site. So really enabling people to engage with nature for those really well-known health and well-being benefits of getting outdoors into the fresh air, interacting with nature. And from a sustainable point of view, looking to really maximise the spend with local contractors and suppliers, using local agricultural contractors alongside our supply chain. And we've delivered a strategically significant project. It's highlighted within the Essex Local Nature Recovery Strategy as a strategic site. We've got that engagement with the North Essex Farm Cluster and sharing that knowledge and benefits with the region in terms of surveys, etc. So challenges, we like to innovate as a business, and we were certainly innovating by being a first mover in the BNG market. That's had its challenges, but we've overcome those, and we are delivering biodiversity unit sales. That evolving metric has been a challenge, and the slow emerging market for units. In terms of a planning perspective, again, challenges around local planning authority, resource, and skills in terms of securing those legal agreements. We're delivering a nature recovery project, but some of the local wildlife has had other ideas. So we've had that deer pressure. Badgers are very obstinate in terms of their passage through the site, so they've dug under fences, opening those up for rabbits and hares to follow through. So we've had to work with that, with badger gates and adapting our design. We had an uninspected sort of influx of voles who were nibbling away at some of our trees as well. And that species-rich grassland on clay, we have had some challenges around that again, which we're overcoming, working with our ecologists. Also bringing the local community along with us. They see Wildfell as a potential public open space, so we need to manage that access and use. It started slowly. There was a lag. Planning approvals are taking longer, so we've had to sort of review our projections for biodiversity unit sales a couple of times already. But the market is coming through a range of different ways that we can sell our units, direct to developers, online platforms, brokers. We're trying a bit of everything really, and trying to make life as easy as possible for those developers. So a range of procurement options for them. In terms of those sustainable revenues, so we're supported fully by the Evergreen Fund and the contributions from the business, but also looking at what those other revenues can come from. So farm rental and easements was approximately 50,000. We did some small scale property sales, selling off some small plots for gardens, developed a $250,000 revenue for us. The woodland grants were just under $1 million on the capital side, and then another 300,000 over the next 15 years. Tree sponsorship, timber sales, another 100,000, and a small number of units sold so far from a biodiversity perspective. But there's a big opportunity there with a potential 7 million of income to come from biodiversity net gain. Just a quick reminder of our second site, Devana, 100 acres, delivering over 200 units, biodiversity units across a range of habitat types. So we've got that running in tandem with Wildfell. And to summarise really the last 5 years for me, I think we are delivering and have delivered a truly unique and impactful project, and will continue to develop that over time. It's reflecting Ground Control's core values in terms of caring for our environment, improving our environment. It's demonstrate teamwork, innovation across the business, and we should all be really proud of what we've achieved through our Evergreen Fund and what we're doing on these projects, and make the most of every opportunity of utilising it in terms of setting us aside from our competitors as a really key differentiator, an opportunity to show clients that what we're delivering as a business.